Good day. My name is Jeffrey Dano, and I am the Chief Medical Officer at Harmony Biosciences. And I would like to thank the International Prader-Willi Syndrome Organization for the opportunity to present. Harmony is a pharmaceutical company headquartered outside Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA, dedicated to developing and commercializing innovative therapies for patients living with rare neurological disorders who have unmet medical needs. Harmony was established in 2017 after we licensed the US rights to Pitolisant from our French partner, Biosciences. We became a public company in August 2020, and now we are a fully integrated pharmaceutical company with about 160 employees. Our path to Prader-Willi syndrome is an interesting one. Soon after we were established in October 2017, I went down to the National Institutes of Health with several members of the PWS patient community and discussed the potential for a clinical development program for Pitolisant in patients with PWS. The following year, in 2018, we attended our first Foundation for Prader-Willi Research annual meeting. And then the year after that, in 2019, at FPWR, we presented a concept of a phase 2 clinical trial in patients with PWS. We opened an investigational new drug application for Pitolisant in PWS in October 2019. Later that year, we performed a phase 1 PK trial in children with PWS on Pitolisant. And in December of last year, we initiated a phase 2 trial of Pitolisant in patients with Prader-Willi syndrome. So what is Pitolisant and how does it work? It is a first-in-class medication with a novel mechanism of action. It is a histamine 3 receptor antagonist inverse agonist. It works by increasing histamine levels in the brain. And histamine is a major wake-promoting neurotransmitter, which helps to stabilize states of sleep and wakefulness. Pitolisant was discovered and developed by our French partner, Biosciences, which is a research-based pharmaceutical company located in Paris. Pitolisant was approved as WAKIX in the EU in March of 2016 for the treatment of narcolepsy in adults with or without cataplexy. WAKIX was approved in the US in August 2019 for the treatment of excessive daytime sleepiness in adult patients with narcolepsy, and followed by the approval of the cataplexy indication in October 2020. WAKIX represents the first and only product approved by the FDA for patients with narcolepsy that is not scheduled as a controlled substance by the DEA, or Drug Enforcement Administration. WAKIX is an oral tablet, and it is taken once daily in the morning upon awakening. As you are all familiar with, Prader-Willi syndrome is a disorder of hypothalamic dysfunction, and this critical brain region controls many important functions, including regulation of hunger and satiety, states of sleep and wakefulness, as well as other important endocrine and metabolic functions. On this slide, on the right side, you see what we refer to as the 3 H's in this circuit diagram: histamine, hypocretin or orexin in the hypothalamus. And what you see is a similarity between hypocretin or orexin, the main neuropeptide in the brain that helps to stabilize states of sleep and wakefulness, and the circuitry for hypocretin, which is very similar for histamine, activating the cerebral cortex, as well as other wake-promoting brain regions, and inhibiting both the REM and non-REM sleep centers. So in the setting of hypocretin deficiency, which is seen in some patients with PWS, histamine becomes an important neurotransmitter to sustain wakefulness. Prader-Willi syndrome, some common experiences, and despite the focus around hyperphagia, EDS has generally not been recognized as a common symptom in patients with PWS. But the more we've learned about this condition, we know that it's experienced in about 60 to 80% of patients living with PWS. And EDS and poor sleep can present early in childhood and remain a problem throughout someone's lifetime. It could also have a significant impact on other symptoms, including attention, vigilance, learning capabilities, and overall cognitive function. So EDS can disrupt normal functioning and have a negative impact on the lives of people living with PWS and their families. As a result, there's an unmet medical need to address the symptom of excessive daytime sleepiness in patients with PWS. This slide has a table which shows some characteristics between patients with Prader-Willi syndrome and those with narcolepsy type 1, or patients with narcolepsy with cataplexy. The mean sleep latency is the time it takes for someone to fall asleep, which is very low in patients with NT1, about 5 minutes. In patients with Prader-Willi syndrome, it's also low with a mean of about 7.2 minutes, not as low as NT1, but lower than normal healthy people. In terms of CSF hypocretin levels, these are very low in patients with NT1 and moderately low in patients with Prader-Willi syndrome, lower than normal controls. There is no genetic associations in patients with Prader-Willi, similar to what is seen in patients with NT1. And the other symptoms, in addition to cataplexy, the other symptoms of REM dysfunction, REM sleep dysfunction, such as sleep paralysis and vivid dreaming and hallucinations, these are less common in patients with Prader-Willi syndrome, although they have been reported, compared to patients with narcolepsy type 1. So lastly, the scientific rationale for pitolisant and why we're investigating it for people living with PWS. As I mentioned, PWS being a disorder of hypothalamic dysfunction, and abnormalities have been found in the hypothalamus in patients with PWS. And many of the symptoms and features are the result of this hypothalamic dysfunction, including hyperphagia and including EDS and sleep-wake state instability. Decreased levels of hypocretin have been found in patients with Prader-Willi, as I mentioned, leading to the sleep-wake state instability, and therefore histamine becoming an important neurotransmitter in patients with PWS. Pitolisant increases histamine levels in the brain and has demonstrated significant improvement in excessive daytime sleepiness in people living with narcolepsy. Lastly, there's preliminary evidence from both animal and human studies that suggests potential benefit of pitolisant in mediating attention, vigilance, and cognitive function. So further studies are needed to assess this, and we are committed to the investigation of pitolisant in patients with Prader-Willi syndrome. Thank you for your attention.